Okay, so now it's time to get a bit more complicated, do some stuff we haven't strictly done before. So what we're going to do now is we're going to figure out how to associate the data together. So we have this one piece of data, which is the shape file, which is all the state boundaries and names. And then we have this one, which is all the McDonald's information. And we basically have the state name as well as the number of McDonald's and a bunch of other crap we don't care about. So, okay, we want something in the end that's going to basically be like this. We click on a pop-up and we see, oh, clicked Alaska, which we had before, which has X number of McDonald's, X number, okay, and if we click Florida, 728, California is 1165. There's all kinds of different amounts. Cool, that actually associates them together in some way. Okay, so how are we going to do this? Well, there's a couple pieces. One, we're going to have to, since these fetch calls happen independently of each other, they don't just necessarily finish in the order that you expect. They're what are called asynchronous functions. That is, they aren't running and finishing in a synchronous manner. So like the fetch call doesn't like finish and then the next fetch call starts. And that's so that the browsers can be quick. Let's say you were fetching a dozen files at once. It doesn't like wait for every one of them to come back before the next one starts. It just fires them all, and then they come back whenever, in whatever order they come back based on the speed of different servers and stuff. So knowing that, we have this thing where we have to be like, okay, when the fetch calls run, we don't know when they necessarily finish, okay? So we don't need the McDonald's information when we first load the map right now for what we're doing. We just need the US states information because that's what we're putting on the map. So what I do here is I make this variable out here, a global variable, that's going to have all that McDonald's information in it once it comes back. So it'll be available to the application generally. And then when I fetch it, blah, 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 it comes back and I just set that variable to the response. So now this variable has this file basically that has all our states and number of McDonald's. This variable now has that for later, for when we want to actually access that data and do something with it. Then I do the same thing that I did previously where I fetch the US states, I put them on the maps, style them, all that stuff, set the bounds, everything, and then we start setting up our click event. Now we're going to do one thing different in the click event than last time. We're going to associate this data together. So knowing that the name is the thing that ties them together, right? That's the thing that brings the two pieces of information to be the same. The name in here, Alabama, is the same name we get here, Alabama. We don't get some other kind of ID or anything. A lot of times web developers are looking for IDs, but in this case, the name is pretty reliable. The name of the states is going to be the same across all the states. There is possibilities of slightly different names, but we're going to try this out. Maybe Hawaii has like an apostrophe in it or something. It's possible that people spell it differently, but for now, it's good enough to try, okay? So here, what I say is we can loop over the spreadsheet data to find the one row of that spreadsheet data that has the same name as the state we clicked. So we know the name of the state because we have it from that clicked properties.name, the same thing we used before to actually show the name, right? Like this is the name of the clicked state. Now we have this number of McDonald's, which I set to 0 every time it's clicked because we're resetting it basically. And what I do is I loop over the McDonald's information, which is what came back from the response that we stored in a global variable. I loop over this, I go for each, and then we're going to be looking at every, oh, not that one. We're going to be looking at every chunk of data. It's going to look at one after another after another. And we're going to say if the state, right, so dot state, if this piece of information matches equals the clicked state name, which is this one, then we set this number of McDonald's to the number of McDonald's that's given in the chunk of data where it matched. Okay, does that make sense? Basically, we have this little bit of information with the number of McDonald's, right? And we want to put that information here so that once this loop finishes, we've basically got not only the clicked state name, but the number of McDonald's that fit in that state. So yeah, basically we loop over this whole set of information. We look for the one that matches the name, and then we save the number of McDonald's. And we have to access this data in this special way because it has this apostrophe and spaces in it. So we have to put this sort of weird brackets and do it this way instead of just dot. If we did a dot here, it would just give us a weird syntax that's like, it's clearly broken in some way. That's how we have to do it when there's some weird character or spaces in there. I believe I've talked about that before. Okay, and then once we get that, we can just set our pop-up with that information. We can have you clicked the state name, which is the same that we had in the last video, which has the number of McDonald's, which is this variable here that's now been set to the matching information from our McDonald's per state JSON. I hope that all makes sense. Obviously, we're starting to talk through code, which is a little wacky, but just looking at it, we've looked at the for each, we've looked at if statements, checking things, checking, greater than, less than, that sort of thing. We haven't really done equals. Generally in JavaScript, you use 3 equal signs to check for an exact comparison. There are exceptions, but you're pretty much always going to use 3 equal signs to check to see, oh, is this thing exactly equal to something else? So here we're checking, is the state equal to the name that we found on the GeoJSON? And if it is, well, then get the number of McDonald's from that one that matched and save it. And then at the end, we come through here and let's check to see if we're actually accurate, right? So let's go click on Alabama. I think Alabama is what, this one? Yeah, I'm right. You clicked Alabama, which has 210 McDonald's. And if we come back to here, we see Alabama has 210 McDonald's. So we are getting the right, it's matching it correctly and it's saving it correctly. And we could check others, to make sure they're all working. Maybe the District of Columbia has some weird one. I don't even think, do we even have it? Is it there? Okay, District of Columbia is there, which has 0. So that might not be matching properly, right? So we could check District of Columbia, then we could go check our US states and see, does that show up? Yes, it does. So it's just that maybe the District of Columbia in here is not included in this data set. So we're missing one. We're missing the District of Columbia. Maybe that's somewhere here. No, it's just not in this. I could go through it and check, but hey, okay, we found a case that it doesn't work. So we know if there's 0, that means that this didn't find anything to match it. It found, oh, none of the states match the current name, so I just left it at 0, right? So you could make it show an error or something instead, but in this case, it just shows 0. Okay, feel free to watch this part again. I don't want to go over it repeatedly, but you can watch it again if you're at all confused about how we made this comparison and check thing. But in the next section, we're going to go over using some of this idea of checking and matching to start visualizing the data, start showing things on the map in a way that is visually indicating the number of McDonald's per state. See you in the next one.